we will.
Yeah.
Hello, Aranishwar. Hello, Aranishwar.
I think he's
I think
muted. You can't hear it. He's muted himself, it looks like.
But he can listen to us.
Yes.
Aruneshwar sir, hello.
I'm
Unmuted.
muted, he said. He said I'm muted.
Sarah, we have a participant from Burundi.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Good
So
evening.
exciting.
Good evening.
Now we have 50 participants. We can start now.
Let me
We'll wait till it's 5 o'clock.
At least till 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah, a minute
We'll wait
more.
for another
One
minute
minute.
and then we'll.
1 minute left. Yeah. But we have
That's a
crossed
discussion.
53.
That's a discussion of the president. Let him exercise it.
Yes. Yes, Pravina, now you can start.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have crossed 60 also, and it's
Okay. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, and namaste to everyone attending this 5th International Virtual Mediation Summer School 2024 webinar worldwide, duly presented by the Nivaran Mediators of the Supreme Court of India in collaboration with Singapore International Mediation Center and Commonwealth Lawyers Association, which commenced its opening ceremony on 26 July 2024. Greetings of the day to all of you present in this webinar. I am Praveena Gautam, advocate on record, Supreme Court of India, and also a mediator in the Supreme Court of India Mediation Center. I will be your host today for day 5 session. I extend a warm welcome to all of you into today's webinar on an overview of conflict and styles of as well as conflict management, resolution, and transformation. It is our pleasure to introduce our esteemed guest speaker for today's session, Ms. Sarah M. Blake, an internationally recognized award-winning conflict strategist and mediator from Western Australia. She is also a director, corporate trainer, media commentator, TEDx speaker, and the best-selling author, wearing many hats, many feathers in her hat. Sarah earned her master's degree in strategic affairs from Australian National University in 2004. She did her master's in indigenous knowledge, Moful Rome, cross-cultural peacemaking and leadership from Charles Darwin University in 2011. Sarah is Australian representative on Global Advisory Board for Mediate Guru, which is a social initiative led by members across the globe. The aim of the organization is to bridge the gap between the general public and the judiciary by creating awareness and showcasing mediation as a future of dispute resolution. Mediate Guru aims to support and empower the next generation of practitioners by connecting them with experts across the globe who educate, inspire, and support them in their profession. Sarah is also a recognized member of Federal Court's native title mediator panel, providing comprehensive mediation and conflict management services. Sarah's expertise in conflict resolution is unparalleled as much as I read about her. With a career spanning over 2 decades, working with individuals, teams, and organizations to resolve complex conflicts with her innovative solutions and improved communications. Her impressive track record includes successful resolving high stakes conflicts, in various industries, from corporate to non-profit, and her innovative approaches have earned her numerous awards and accolades. Sarah's unique strength lies in her ability to analyze the complex conflict dynamics and develop tailored strategies that addresses the root causes of the disputes. Her expertise has been sought after by global organizations, and she has worked with diverse groups from executive teams to community leaders to enhance their conflict management skills. Sarah's passion for conflict resolution is evident in her engaging and interactive presentation style, which we are soon going to see, which has made her a sought after speaker at international conferences and events. Her ability to break down complex concepts into practical, actionable advice has made her a favorite among audience worldwide. Sarah provides high-level advice to federal, state, and international parties on conflict and dispute resolution as well. She was recently recognized for her contribution to international community peacemaking, and her unique approach to conflict has enabled her to reduce community violence, increased collaborative partnership, and facilitate cultural change. Today, Sarah will share her valuable insights and practical strategies for effective conflict management, drawing from her extensive experience and research. Her presentation promises to be informative, engaging, and thought-provoking too. We all are thrilled to have her share expertise with us. At the end, I would request all the participants to take this opportunity and feel free to post the queries, questions into the chat box, and we'll address them in our question and answer session we'll be having at the end. So here I'll just request Sarah and all the audience to welcome Sarah Blake, a true expert in her field, and get ready to gain valuable insights and skills that will enhance not only my, but your ability to manage conflicts, improve your personal and professional relationships. So, Sarah, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. What a really humbling introduction. I feel really grateful to be here to present to all of you today. I was saying before I came and joined you all that I learn as much from you as you might learn from me. This opportunity to talk and learn and listen is really at the heart of what we do as peacemakers. So the opportunity to engage with you is such a wonderful privilege. We are going to be powering through our conversation today. And I have a few moments and questions as we go through for all of you, and you'll be provided with the slides afterwards. I'm going to share the PowerPoint with you so that you can reflect on it in the future. I'm going to be sharing my screen, and just to let you know that we have a storm going through where I am at the moment. So fingers crossed that doesn't interrupt our signal or our power. So let's dive into the conversation. Today, we're going to be talking about conflict and what it means to respond to these conflict situations. I wanted to begin the session, though, with an acknowledgement of country. The work that I do in a cross-cultural space, particularly here in Australia, is about honouring the traditional cultures that I engage with. And here in Australia, we like to acknowledge the traditional owners through an acknowledgement of country. I'm on Whadjuk Noongar land. I'm on border country, in fact, between clan groups. And that means that it's a really interesting space to live and learn about the culture that I engage with and learn from. And I just wanted to take a moment to share that with you because it's as much a part of who I am. Now, in the work that I do as a mediator and dealing with people in conflict, it becomes really important for people to understand who I am, not just the title that I wear as a mediator. So I wanted to put it into practice and share with all of you a little about who I am and how I got into this work. I'm a second generation practitioner. So my father's actually a barrister, and I'm a second generation practitioner who lived the language of discernment, of dealing with conflict differently, of bringing community together to try to resolve disputes. I feel really privileged for that upbringing. As I've gone on in my career, I've moved into speaking and media and writing. And one of the really interesting things is that the work we do can be hard and it can create a cost for us. My poetry writing turns out to be a way for me to debrief and bring my creativity back into the space to nurture myself as I go through. So I want to encourage all of you to find ways as you develop in your career and as you find yourself perhaps more experienced to make sure you reconnect with who you are as a person, because how we are impacts how others receive and experience us in our role. And it's really important that we connect with those moments. As we engage today, I want us all to challenge ourselves and practice the art of disciplined communication. As mediators, as lawyers, as practitioners, we're doing this quite regularly. So it's important to stop and listen with more than our ears. When we do this mediation work, we need to listen with our heart, with our eyes, with our senses to what's going on around us. When we model this to our clients, we create opportunities for more information to come to the table. When we model curiosity, we expand the potential for solutions. Being respectful, being disciplined in what we say and how we say it. Less is sometimes best. And to model that notion of future focus in the problem solving in the conflict space, people will often fall back into blame. They will fall back into positions that bed them in division. And our role in creating language and creating bridges towards solutions needs to transform that story and that narrative into a future focus. You'll probably notice as we're going through this that I'm modeling some of the things I do and how I do it in the presentation. But I thought it might be a curiosity to hear from all of you. If you could just, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. I want to encourage you all to jump onto the chat function. And I want you to put the first word you think of when you hear and associate with conflict. So what word do you associate with conflict? I'm curious to see what pops up. Stress, humanity, disrespect, disagreement, fighting. I love this. Avoid, inevitable, fight. Isn't it fascinating when we start a conversation with what does conflict mean to us? As we navigate this space for our clients, it will also mean something different for each of them. As we're preparing them to have a difficult conversation to negotiate outcomes, sometimes we need to take it right back to basics and reflect on what does this conflict mean for them, for us, and how do we hold this space? For those of you that have been practicing for a while, I'm also curious around what it feels like to be dealing. Do you find it difficult to deal with the high levels of emotion? Do you like dealing with that emotion? Is that one of the hardest things as mediators to navigate when parties get emotional in the conflict? Who finds that hard? Hands up if you've got the chat function. I sometimes do. Dealing with the emotions in a conflict space can be one of the hardest tasks we do. And it's really interesting when we learn a process and we learn all these tools in our toolkit, that ultimately it comes down to how we understand people and our ability to help them manage their emotions through a difficult negotiation. Let me jump back to sharing my screen with you all. So what is conflict? Some of you, this will be familiar. You'll have done this research. It will sound very familiar to you, but it is good practice for us to go back and just challenge our own thinking. Conflict is and results from the situation where one or more people adopt a position that only allows one solution. If they could force their results, force their way, there wouldn't be a conflict. So it's there for a reason. And it's telling us that there's confusion, there's difference, and often the need for change. It's a normal part of our lives. We'll have conflict with our kids, with our families, perhaps with our colleagues, but it's how we handle it, whether it's destructive or constructive. And as mediators, we play a powerful role in shaping our communities, in shaping our professions, and the interactions with our colleagues to really model constructive ways of difficult conversation. And I'm really passionate for all of us to step into those leadership roles. We need to be able to understand the causes of conflict, because we often rely or fall back into the legal lens of interpreting a conflict perhaps from a contractual basis or from the letter of the law. But we know that causes of conflict are so much more complex than that. It might be about resources or money or people and personalities, interests or values, information, perhaps a situation. There's structures and hierarchy of power and systems. And the interaction and intersection of those issues are what drive and create conflict. We know some key characteristics of it are power dynamics and the cost of the conflict itself. Because when the cost starts to rise, it's only then that people want to really resolve the conflict. If they can carry the cost, they probably will avoid it as long as they can. We also know in conflict that strong emotions rise, and often it's about differences in how we interpret things, differences around our values and priorities. I wanted to give you a taste of some of the work that I do and the different spaces we engage with. So through this presentation, you've got a scattering of videos and photo images. And it's a reminder for all of us that we all will find ourselves in conflict at different situations. There's a point of difference or a confusion, and this is a really simple diagram of that cycle of conflict. There's a problem, and we can't resolve it together. Generally, then things start to escalate. And if we don't resolve it early, it really embeds and becomes a dispute or disagreement. Again, we have an opportunity to resolve it at this point and reach that point of resolution. Sometimes we can do it ourselves, and sometimes we need a little bit of help. Sometimes when the conflict has become and escalated so high that it becomes crisis, we need to manage the conflict a little bit differently. It becomes a process of de-escalation, of stabilization, perhaps of resolution and then recovery. So it's really important for all of us to understand and map the stage of the conflict that we might be supporting our clients through. Is it in the early stages, or has it really rooted and become really embedded in positions? All of these things really impact the willingness and the capacity of people to engage in hard conversations. And why is it hard? Why is it hard for us to deal with conflict? Often it requires us sitting with the unknown. We don't have a lot of control. We're not sure how they're going to react. Are we able to force our way through? And this unknown and this fear often then generates a high level of anxiety. What it does, it generates an anxiety response. Instead of having that calm, steady heartbeat, we are forced into a much higher state of arousal. Our adrenaline kicks in. Our stress hormones flood our brain. We stop listening. Our physical reactions, we might get hot and sweaty. We might jitter and wriggle around. And what it does, it impacts our decision to make complex decisions. Our capacity for decision making is reduced. We're not actually able to take on multiple perspectives anymore. And in fact, our memory becomes a little untrustworthy. We start believing our own stories and not necessarily what really happened. So this is all really normal reactions to a high anxiety situation. And I think understanding this is important for all of us, because our clients will often be in this heightened state when they come to us. They will have been embedded in this conflict. It will be very uncomfortable for them. We have a really important role to play as we try to help them manage these emotional responses, to be able to find a place where they can start to bring that heartbeat down and breathe. You've probably all come across Thomas Kilmann's conflict mode instruments, talking about our different responses to conflict: the competitive, the accommodating, the avoiding, compromising, and collaboration. But what I wanted to say to you is that there is not necessarily one size fits all or one right response. For each situation, it might require an adaptation. We might actually need to be competitive because this situation requires it of us. Or perhaps the conflict poses a physical risk to individuals, and it's not safe for them to engage in the process. We need to be able to ascertain and manage that. It's about thinking around power and how we perceive power and how we might use power to get a good outcome. So I really want you to reflect when you're next engaging with your clients, not just about where they are in their responses to conflict, but what might be the most appropriate style. And we can adapt. How I am at home dealing with conflict is probably a little bit different to how I am in the workplace. And that's okay as long as we're aware of it. This is another powerful photo of a traditional peacemaking ceremony in Northern Australia. And it's a photo for me of a ceremony that I participated in and was a part of, but it shows the bringing together of cultures, that this process of dispute resolution, of mediation, of peacemaking can create so many bridges when we honour and respect what we all bring and where we're at. And I wanted to share it with you as an example of the flexibility of the mediation process to adapt and respond to diverse needs of where our clients are and how they are responding to conflict. I don't know about you, but I like to inject a little bit of humour and lightness sometimes where I can. And recently I've been thinking about all those people that I am dealing with in a mediation room. And I've seen a lot of personality types. And I started thinking, can I kind of refine and define them a little bit more? So I played around and I've come up with a few examples. As I go through them, you might think, oh, well, I've seen them, or I know somebody like that. Or perhaps over there in India, you'll have your own examples of some of the personalities that play out in conflict. Perhaps in the example of the fairy tale weaver is a person that can't deal with conflict. Everything is fine and there is no problem here. They can't see the problem. Then you've got the host with the most. They'll be walking around and offering food and drink to everyone, wanting everyone to be happy. There is a problem over in the corner, but everyone just needs to forget about it and get on really well. Perhaps you're the event director and there's a problem and you're going to solve it. Maybe there's a magician in the workplace. These people are fabulous at identifying the conflict or the problem, but they'll make it work to their advantage, not necessarily everyone else's. We have the blame gamers, and we've got those who want to have a fight. And then we've got those who want to try and create wise solutions. Again, we might be one day, and then another situation, we might be having a bad day and we're more about telling everyone what to do. As it's true for us, it's true for our clients. And so being able to have a conversation differently around where are you at in this conflict? Are your emotions heightened? Or have you been able to process them and name them and move towards a more rational and informed, balanced decision-making space? Our job really is to help move people towards a space for better decision-making. To be able to do that, we as practitioners need to be able to be calm. We need to be able to be okay in a conflict space. If we're repressing the conflict, if we're shutting down conversation, we limit the potential for real good outcomes. But we can't get drawn into the conflict ourselves, and we can't let that conflict escalate either. So it's a balancing act. For me, Every mediation, every conflict intervention I do, I ground myself. I dig my feet metaphorically into the sand here. I take a deep breath. I essentially meditate and prepare myself to be calm and honoring of where people are at. I model what it is to be a peacemaker, knowing that that energy I bring to the room will have a significant impact on the way they listen, communicate, and negotiate. It's interesting reflecting on my presentation from a couple of years ago to today, because I think that the conflict landscape has changed. I think we're seeing an increasing complexity of the conflict landscape. People are wanting to be right or wrong. They're not very comfortable with nuance. There's survival and blame. There's a sense of injustice, and I want what's fair to me. Built into that is this increasing social media presence where people want the perfect outcome and the perfect solution. And for all of us that have been around for a while, there is no perfect. As much as I'd love to have that magic wand, it doesn't happen. So we're facing a complex landscape to be able to move through. Again, an insight of me moving through multiple landscapes, from the bush, remote Australia, under the banyan tree, to being in a corporate space. It's our capacity to guide people through this that is so powerful. You'll all be familiar with the dispute resolution continuum, so I don't want to dive into that. What you might not have heard so much about is these dynamics of conflict management, conflict intervention, and conflict transformation. What it requires of us is a capacity to assess the conflict and its risks, balanced with what is it the clients are seeking. Knowing those dimensions will help us shape and craft the process itself. It's also really important that we maintain our integrities as practitioners, that our integrity remains with the process itself, not so much with the outcome. Our responsibility is to guide these parties to their own meaningful solutions that are sustainable, are rich, that have meaning for them when they leave this room. And if we haven't been willing to dive into and understand the risks in that conflict situation, then it's very likely the parties haven't either. So what is management, resolution, or transformation? And management is recognizing that sometimes conflict can't be resolved. And we need to understand what's causing this to be able to reduce the risks. In resolution, we are specifically looking for the solving of the problem. And in transformation, it's not just the solving of the problem, but a changing of the relationship between parties to the conflict. It's much more holistic and all-encompassing. So we each have a role to play in the mediation world, whether it's driving solutions, whether it's managing dynamics, or helping provide those opportunities. Whether you're adopting an adversarial approach to mediation, an interest-based approach to mediation, or even a transformative approach to mediation, it's about being clear on what our role is. It's honouring that role and being really focused on how we create the conditions for ripe problem solving, be it competitive approach, cooperative, or even a more coaching and supportive development and empowering model. When we're clear, it holds us to standards, which enables us to hold that space for others more effectively. And as we go through, I wanted to leave you with some tips. And I think this is really practical from my own perspective. These are some core principles that I honour in my work, in every stage of my work. It is being aware that how you are impacts how they respond. If we're feeling anxious and stressed in the morning, it's likely whether we try and mask it or not, they're going to pick up on that. It's about bringing curiosity to problem solving and helping them bring some curiosity to the solving of their problems. And sometimes that requires us to reframe our stories, our language, their stories and their language, creating new pathways. It's really important that we create clarity, legitimacy, and authority, both of the process and of any settlement agreement they reach. Because if you reach an agreement that isn't solid and deep and rich, layered, in fact, when they leave the room and things get a bit grittier and uncomfortable, it's likely that that agreement will crumble. As practitioners, we hold structure, we create boundaries, and we nurture a really rigorous and honest process. That's our job and our responsibility. We make it safe for people to have difficult conversations, conversations that they probably couldn't have without our intervention. It's an honor and a privilege to do this work. And I really want to encourage all of you to lean into and explore the depth and potential of this profession. We can change lives. We can change their experiences of conflict so next time they do it better. I want to give you a little bit of hope that you may not know this, but you are contributing to a huge societal shift in the way we do difficult. We're empowering people to do difficult conversations well. And I wanted to invite you to reach out, to connect with me. I love sharing my story, but more importantly, I want to help you share your story. It's our connections, it's our relationships, it's this online community that will really help us to shape the future. And I hope I haven't pressed any wrong buttons, but I think I'm finished on time.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for such a soothing presentation. We have received so many messages, accolades for you for such a beautiful presentation. In fact, Nandini wrote that the session was so soothing and lucid that she was feeling as if she is attending some musical class. Such
Thank
an
you.
incredible session. In fact, one of our audiences has also written such beautiful comments for you for such a wonderful class. And taking it further, I have a few questions which have come into the chat box. And
Please.
one of them is by Swapna Sundar, which you may would like to respond to. Her question is, are conflict and disputes synonymous when it comes to mediation?
Are they
Your
anonymous? Was that the
Yes.
question? Yeah. Look,
Are conflict and dispute synonymous when it comes
synonymous.
to mediation?
For me, there's nuance to it. For me, I tend to refer to matters as disputes when they're small and contained, whereas conflict, when I'm doing my work, is generally something that has been happening over a longer duration. It's deeper, it's embedded deeper, and will often require a more comprehensive intervention model than simply doing a mediation. So for me, there's nuance, but I think it's important to understand for the general public, there's not really. Disputes, conflict for them generally means the same thing. So as practitioners, we can have nuance. Let's clarify it with our parties, but often they won't understand the difference.
I hope, Swapna, you have got your answer. Thank you so much for raising this question. And thank you, Sarah. Now, moving forward, Irene Lilaya, HSC, has posted a comment. You may would like to make some response to that. She says that we need to identify the best techniques to deal with the different personalities on the mediation table. Your insight into this comment.
Absolutely. If you look back to the personality types that I talked about earlier, I've actually created a tool that helps me help others have a conversation around what are these personalities? How do we recognize them? And how do we work with them? So you might get a personality that is very combative. They don't really want to be there in the room. They just want to force their way through. Sometimes it's about being gentle on their ego in the public space, but on a one-to-one basis, we can have very different conversations, really reality testing and rigorously. So depending on those personality types, you'll deploy different strategies. The knowledge of how to do this comes with experience. So the more you're in the room doing it, the more you'll learn what works and doesn't. But also the co-mediation, finding mentors, and having conversations like this around understanding those personality traits. And interestingly, the research is moving away from personality types to talk about behaviors. Our job isn't to diagnose a personality type, but we can identify behaviors that get in the way of mediation or behaviors that help mediation. And I love this because the language of behaviors becomes very practical for us. And as mediators, we can do that and set those standards well.
Very true. And I would also like to add to this, which you were just explaining while you were doing your presentation, that while going to a mediation table, we need to prepare ourselves. That means we need to be grounded. We have to make ourselves grounded and calm and quiet and to hear them. So this can be another trait to be on the mediation table while determining the personalities on the mediation table.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Irene, for the comment you made in the comment box. Thank you so much. There's another question, if I may put it quickly to Sarah, is how to identify and manage parties' emotions, both positive over independence and negative uncooperative during mediation. Especially when you mentioned that, while dealing with emotions, it's the hardest task to do
Yeah,
that. So how
that's
would
right.
you identify and manage that? What is
I have a few tricks that I do. And the first is I spend a lot of time I'm very lucky. I do a lot of my mediation as a private practitioner, which means I can do and invest in pre-mediation. I'll often meet with individual parties separately, and I allow them a chance to share their story with me. Tell me why we're here today. Tell me about this conflict and how it's impacted you. Help me understand what's going on for you. And I do that in a one-on-one setting because often it's the first time they've told their story. And it allows them to bring out high levels of emotion without impacting the negotiation space. So they've told their story, they've offloaded those high emotions. And then they kind of do this thing where they go, and they're ready to shift phases into readiness for negotiation. So I do the preparation work to maximize the chances that the mediation time is more effective. In the mediation space, I allow and I front load my introduction by saying there will probably be emotions. I'm going to let that go on for a little while, but if they get in the way of our negotiations, of that process, then I may intervene. That gives me authority if the personalities start causing problems. Perhaps they're crying too much, perhaps they are getting really angry, that I will stagger and layer my intervention levels depending on where they are in that space.
true? At times there are in mediation happens that the parties or one of the party gets so agitated at times you want to leave the mediation room
Yeah.
for a moment just to calm yourself and then
Yes.
carry it on forward. So once
Can I just say quickly,
Yes.
one of the tips that I know for myself to has been true as I've developed confidence is the capacity to say, hey, let's take a break, or hey, this mediation isn't right now. And that allows me to diffuse, step out, or pause, whether I need it or they need it. So I encourage you to develop the confidence to say no, in effect.
A quick fix for the mediation to further carry on. Yes. So one of your audience, Suvarna S. Ganu, has posed a question to you that have you dealt with persons or person in conflict with society? Does mediation help in such situations to bring them back in harmony with the society, since you have the experience in that field as well? So would you like
Yeah.
to share some incidents where you have done the conflict resolution in the society?
What a profound question, and what a desperate need often for people in that space. I think that sometimes the mediation doesn't become with so much with other people, but with them internally themselves. It's almost like a conflict coaching role. It's about providing space for them to explore their uncertainties, their fears, reality test that. Where else can we find some different opinions? Tell me why this matters to you. It is about developing trust they have to trust you first. And when there's trust, you can ask those harder, deeper questions. So I do some of that work. It's hard work. It requires a high level of compassion, grace, and gentleness, and recognizing it's not up to us to fix this for them. They need to want to do that.
Okay. Now, because while you were doing your presentation, you just have a slide of a powerful society mediation prayers which you had showed that had such powerful impact of peacemaking ceremony in the country. So that's a very pertinent question posed by her and sharing of your experience.
Yeah.
This Abha Sharma has really praised your presentation in the comment box. And then there is another question by Swati Pendekar. She says that how to tackle emotional intelligence in conflict management.
Yeah. Look, there's a big focus on emotional intelligence, and it starts with us. We have to do the work on us to then be able to manage, negotiate, influence, and shape others. It's being able to name emotions. Look, I can see that you're feeling quite frustrated. I'm wondering if you're feeling frustrated, what do we need to do to help get you ready to be able to have this conversation? So it's naming it in a way that doesn't create defensiveness, doesn't box them in the corner. It's a way of making them feel like they have a little bit of control. I can see this is becoming really frustrating. Do we need to take a break, or should we push on for another 5 minutes and then I'll have a coffee break for everyone? So it's giving them elements or degrees of control, which will again help to bring down some of that anxiety level.
All right, thank you so much. And I think Nandini Gore has raised her hand to ask a question to you directly. Nandini, over to you.
Hi, Sarah. So last week, Nivaran team was attending a conference at Hyderabad. So one of the speaker was telling us that it is a mediator has to resolve the conflict not only between the parties, but the lawyers also. So there was one particular case she cited, and she said, I was supposed to first mediate between the lawyers and then between the client. So have you ever had these type of instances, and how do you resolve it?
Look, I have had situations where the lawyers have been so powerful in helping us get solutions, and then the flip side where they've completely got in the way of getting solutions. I adapt my process. I will meet with the lawyers on a one-on-one basis before bringing them and their parties into the room. In doing that, I set expectations with them. This is how I run a mediation. This is my hope for your role. This is how we might deal with problems or communication or tensions. So I'm establishing a degree of authority that doesn't impact their reputation. It allows them to save face, essentially. So it's not a surprise when they come to the mediation room. There are occasions where you have to step in and remind them of their roles in the mediation process. Sometimes that requires a timeout and a one-on-one caucus conversation, a joint, it will really vary, but it is important that I show respect, but it also indicate that my responsibility is process, not yours today. I'd love for you to be able to help your party do that. You've got a critical role. We've got to make them feel valuable, so that they don't feel like this is a threat to them, but they're a part of the process.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. There's an interesting question Shubhangi Kumati has posed to you is, Sarah, how do you deal with an arrogant client who's narcissist?
Oh, look, there is so much information and resources on the internet increasingly around the challenges of dealing with a narcissistic personality. I think part of it for me is recognizing and testing the reality of, do you want to be here to resolve this dispute today? Are you here in good faith? We're really testing that out. We're testing that if we don't resolve this today, what might this look like? Sometimes their level of manipulation is profoundly destructive. So I am alert for those subtle passive aggressive behaviours. My primary concern then becomes, does the other party feel safe? Is this a safe negotiation space or not? Understanding narcissists and what their primary drivers are, what are their real needs here? Yeah. And often it's about saving face and reputation. So if there's threats to that, they're more likely to come to the table and manage that. But sometimes when the parties themselves are overwhelmed with the other party, being a narcissist, you might need to refer them out to some counselling or some psychologist support to get them ready to mediate.
Yeah, coming to the psychologist, one of the audiences have asked, don't we need in such cases a psychologist to be a part of those mediation sessions?
I don't think necessarily, but our role isn't as counsellor. So I'm checking, are you okay? Are you able to negotiate in this process? Again, I'm focusing on the behaviours that will help or get in the way. But sometimes in extreme situations, we do need a team around the parties or ourselves. So a team approach to dispute resolution. Again, there are so many different factors and scope for blending a really rich mediation process.
So another audience of ours, Adina Jones, has posed a question that denial and deflection are hardcore mechanism in conflict. What tools do you recommend for breaking down such emotional barriers to effective mediation? With your
Again, a great question. I love your questions. You're really pushing me. It's
Thank
good.
you, Mr. Jones. Yeah.
It's about our questioning. When we encounter barriers of any type in a mediation, it's really getting into, I'm really struggling to understand what's the problem here. Can you help me understand? What is this problem here? What is this barrier? Can you tell me some more? Can you help the other party understand this? So it's our capacity to bring curiosity tempered with reality testing. Well, hang on, you just said this before. I'm a little bit confused. Can you clarify why your position has changed from here to here? We can play a bit of a devil's advocate role. We can be curious in that. Inside, we know that they're manipulating, but we frame it as a curiosity because that creates space.
Sarah, I guess that you have made this presentation so well, so smooth, and so smooth as well that I would love to read one or two comments in the comments box. Beverly L. Mahabir says that I really love the way in which the presenter stresses the importance of our role as mediators. The another one says that absolutely she's sweet but seems very firm as well. I love that you are a firm appears to be a firm mediator and a very good presenter as well.
Thank you.
Is this one last question I'm going to take, and it says that does law have a role in mediation at all?
Absolutely, it does. Mediation for me falls within the legal framework. We don't sit outside the law. And I think if we start to think we sit outside the law, we open ourselves up and make vulnerable our clients. Now, the mediation may not sit within a court structure, but we have to be alert to, is this decision legitimate? Does it fit within the rule of law? Are we helping to create wise and sustainable decisions? Now, that applies in the family court system, in community mediation, in cross-cultural work, in workplace, in commercial contracts, in the environment and society and governance landscapes. We're all having to be alert to these complex layers of informed decision-making.
All right. Now, taking the same question forward, Nitya Joshi asks, that very often there is a constant conflict between the legality of an issue versus morality and ethnicity. How do you deal with the issues in such situations and siding towards what? If you could have an example.
Yeah. Look, I love that. I as a non-lawyer, I grew up with lawyers around me. My brother's constitutional law academic. So I understand the language of law, but I also understand that sometimes the frame of reference that lawyers bring to how they assess and pull apart a conflict is within a specific frame. And that's necessary and vital. But the conflict doesn't easily and always sit within that frame very well. And we know this because conflicts are driven not by the letter of the law, but by people. So it is about as mediators, our responsibility, if we are interested in sustainable outcomes, is to open up that frame and to challenge the scope of the way we think about conflict, not just the letter of the law, but what are your interests here? Is there some historical, reputational, emotional, employment, health? The gamut of potential influencing factors is wide. It's about recognizing for the parties, what can we influence today? What is within our responsibility to resolve? And will this contribute to sustainable outcomes?
Very interestingly, someone, I'll just find out the name, has asked a very interesting question. And the question is Sudarshan Rangan. He asked you that, do you see AI playing a transformative role in conflict prevention?
AI in conflict resolution and mediation is so interesting. Certainly here in Australia, there is a increased adoption of AI within the court system, particularly in allowing parties to assess the validity or the likelihood of a resolution. I think in a mediation and resolution space, particularly transformative though, that AI may play a role in providing some context. I don't think it will do us out of a job. And I think that because people are complex and we're layered, and there's this inability of AI to get the nuances of where we are and what does a good outcome look like. And so I think it's our capacity to build the bridges and how do we best enhance decision making.
True, with the increasing technology and AI taking our place, I mean, in the future, it may help us. Now, interestingly, which we also feel while doing mediations, that there are times when we feel emotionally frustrated because sometimes the conflict and the issues between the parties are so taxing.
Yeah.
So the question which comes from Priyanka is, how do you keep yourself sane after mediation sessions? Doesn't it cause
Thank you.
emotional troll on you?
Thank you for this question. I want to be really brutally honest with everyone. The work of conflict resolution and mediation is hard. If you are giving yourself to the room, it often hits us here. And we can carry that. It's our job, particularly if we've got good boundaries. But there are some things we need to do to extend our capacity to hold empathy. There's things like making sure you debrief from every single mediation you do with a colleague, and it might take 5 or 10 minutes. I do it for every single one, and it allows me to step away from the conflict because conflict taints whether we are aware of it or not. So debrief. Do your professional development, create communities of practitioners where you can laugh, where you can cry, where you can celebrate this business. And also, I hit burnout for the first time in 28 years this year. And it was a shock to me to reach a point where I wasn't coping so well anymore. I lacked empathy. And so I think it's a recognition that the conflict landscape for all of us at the moment is really complex. Post-COVID, the mental health issues of our clients are really accelerating. The divisions in our societies are becoming more marked. The complexities of what a good decision looks like is hard. And this is hard for us as practitioners because we care. So I want to encourage all of you to bring more discipline to the way you ground yourself, to the way you fill your buckets, whether it's poetry writing, walking on the beach, whether it's out in the bush, whether it's meditating, whatever you need to do, we need to be more consciously disciplined rather than just thinking, yeah, it's going to happen. Because if I'm going to hit burnout after this time, it's going to happen to anyone. And we need to share those stories. This is us as humans in a really difficult space, and our role is so important.
Rightly said so, because it drains ourselves at the end of
Yeah.
session. At the same time, when any settlement of the conflict takes place, it really feels very fulfilling and satisfying.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
next question, which I'm going to take is, you spoke about recovery after resolution. When do you conclude that a conflict is fully resolved?
It will vary depending on the type of case that we're managing. Sometimes resolution is simply a signing of a contract of agreement, and it's very clinical, it's very straightforward, job done. Those situations are often when there is not a continuing relationship between the parties. For parties that will have a continuing connection or a relationship interaction, and it could be corporate clients, it could be community or workplace. So when there's a continuing relationship, there is a need for not just signing the dotted line, but in a sense, an emotion of healing. And if any of you have ever done a mediation where you've walked away feeling like, oh, those parties have walked out of this room shaking hands and laughing as they've walked out the door. And look, when they came in, they were shouting at each other. There's some magic that we can create sometimes where healing occurs. So this notion of transformation is incredibly powerful. Some of the work around remediation or restorative justice touches on it because it talks about not just getting an agreement, but getting this sense of peace and calm. So it's as much about mindset, hearts, and intellect as it is about signing a dotted line.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I just have one question, since you have such wide experience ranging to 20 years of experience. What is the difference between resolving the conflict in the corporate world and the society at large? What is the difference and what was your experience in that?
Yeah.
You can share with us.
It's so interesting because on the surface, you wouldn't think there was much consistency or similarities between those two spaces. They seem so different and apart from each other.
Diverse, quite diverse.
Yeah,
Yes.
but strangely, it's my work in communities and in society that has empowered me to best help people in corporate spaces. Because what it does is I reframe the language of humanity for them. Very often their egos or their need for performance indicators and financial decisions has clouded their thinking. And so what I'm able to do from my community and society work is bring a little bit of humanity back into the room, reminding people that we are just humans doing the best that we can. And what do you need to be able to reach a place where you don't just have a good economic outcome, but you can feel really proud of this agreement today? So we shape the language to be able to make them both feel safe, but deepen their thinking and analysis.
All right, thank you. Now, Mr. Pavel Provic is raising his hands, I'm told. He has one question for you. Mr. Pavel, can you just pose your question, please? I think he was here. He was raising his hand for quite some time, I'm told.
You might be on mute.
Maybe. Mr. Pavel, can you just pose your question if you're there, please? Yes, he raised his hand. Okay, ask to unmute. In the meantime, there's another audience who has asked a question as to what is the role of mediation in criminal cases, how far it'll be successful in reducing the burden of the courts. If you can just give your insight on that.
Yeah, look, in the criminal space, it's a really tricky space to be conducting mediation. In Australia, there are small opportunities of where that's occurred. It's particularly happened in restorative justice spaces in the criminal court, particularly young offenders and who perhaps are from Aboriginal communities, where the sentencing requires an engagement and cultural sensitivity. So I think it is really important in these particularly complex cases. Often we need a determination of right or wrong. And once that determination is made, we're more ready and able to negotiate what a solution or outcome might look like. Remember, mediation isn't about determining who's at fault, but how do we resolve the matter? And in criminal cases, the driving principle really that people are looking for is what they've done wrong, right or wrong. So that determination is really critical around whether or not we're ripe then for the negotiation process.
All right, thank you so much, Sarah. With this session of questions and answers, we come to the close of this session. And I would like to thank you, Sarah, for sharing her expertise and insights with us today. Your presentation was truly exceptional and soothing, as commented by almost all the audiences we have today, of around more than 165 of them. And we are grateful for the time and effort you put into sharing your knowledge with us. Your practical strategies and real life examples have given us valuable tool to manage conflict more effectively. And we appreciate your willingness to share your expertise with our august audience, comprising of so diverse people from the worldwide. Other experts in the field, advocates and mediators, and people from all walk of life who have joined us today. To our audience and participants, we thank you for your active participation, engagement throughout the webinar. Your thoughtful questions, comments have enriched our discussion and added value perspective to our conversation. We appreciate your enthusiasm and commitment to learning and growth, and we are glad you could join us today. We also thank you. I would also like to thank our team members who worked behind the scenes to make this webinar a success. Your hard work and dedication are appreciated, and we couldn't have done it without you. Finally, we want to thank our organization for supporting our efforts to bring valuable content to our community. We are proud to be part of an organization that values learning and growth, and we are grateful for the opportunity to contribute to that mission. That concludes our webinar on conflict strategy with Sarah Blake. We hope you found the session informative and helpful. We are glad you could join us today. We appreciate your feedback and suggestions, and will use them to improve our future webinars as well. Before I go, I want to remind my audience that the conflict resolution is a valuable skill that can benefit many areas of your life. We encourage you to continue learning, growing in this area, and we are committed to supporting you in that journey. With that note and hoping to turn conflict into positive changes. Thank you again, Sarah, our audience, participants, for your contributions. We wish you continued success in all your endeavors, Sarah, and we look forward to connecting with you again. Goodbye for now. But before that, I would also like to thank Mr. Santhan Krishnan, advocate and mediator, the untiring force behind this wonderful initiative of 5th International Virtual Mediation Summer School 2024, along with Mr. Jitendra Sharma, Senior Advocate, Nandini Gore, Abha Sharma, Mr. Rakesh Khanna, Senior Advocate, and each one of you, my senior friends and colleagues who participated in this session. Yes, last but not the least, I would also like to thank Rahul Kumar, who's a budding young lawyer and who took care of the technical support to make this webinar a successful and seamless proceedings. I wish you all the best and take your leave to conclude this session on a positive note. Thank you and namaste. Thank you so much. Thank
you, everyone.
It was wonderful having you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you
Sarah.
so much.
It was a wonderful session. I was there, and it was a really wonderful.
Thank you
It was
so much.
such an honor. Thank you for the organizers. Thank you, Satpan, for holding this. Thank you, Pravina, for your amazing hosting of the session. I can't wait to hear from all of you and see how you transform the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Praveen.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Great.
Parveena, can you tell for tomorrow's program? She is already here.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.